Boo.
Trick or treat, motherfucker.
Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore for a very special Halloween episode, and I'm joined by my colleague at Film Threat, also from Horror Buzz, Norman Gidney.
Hey, how are you guys?
We just got out of a screening of Halloween, the new Halloween, directed by David Gordon Green, with music by John Carpenter, starring Jamie Lee Curtis, a follow-up to the original Halloween. But before we talk about that, want to get in a couple of plugs. First of all, if you are someone who would like to have your movie reviewed by Film Threat, just go to filmthreat.com, scroll to the bottom, there's a little submit button. Click on that submit button. You can submit your film. We will review anything, and I mean anything. Short films, features, documentaries, whatever movie you've made, you want to submit to us, send it our way. We'll review it. And Norm, this is haunt season for Norm. So, and if you have not visited his website, horrorbuzz.com, it really is, we depend on Norm to be our expert when it comes to horror at Film Threat. But Norm, you've got some events coming up for Horror Buzz that you might want to let Film Threat podcast listeners in on.
Well, actually, a lot of the events have already happened. What we do is we do something called the Passport to Fear, which is offering different destinations to haunt fans where they can go to, say, Queen Mary on a particular night or Not Scary Farm on a particular night for an event that we're holding, and you get everything that you could possibly ask for. You get front-of-the-line access, you get a meal, you get behind-the-scenes tours, you get to meet everybody. It's basically a big VIP night that we hold at the different venues in Southern California and this year in Northern California too.
And I actually attended one of those events. It was phenomenal. It's just one of those, like, during haunt season, which I know is your busiest time of year. I barely speak to you. It's fantastic. Now, where can people go to get information about it on your website?
Well, they can go to horrorbuzz.com and click on the button that says tickets. There's also a huge banner up on the top that is a direct link to the tickets for the Queen Mary. Because Queen Mary, we're actually having that. It's a little weird. We're having that on November 2nd. They're doing their closing night, and they're celebrating Dia de los Muertos on Friday, November 2nd. And so that night, we're going to get a behind-the-scenes tour. We're going to get 2 drink tickets, street tacos, access to the RIP lounge, and front of the line for everything the entire night.
And then that after November 2nd, you go back into your coffin, and then you wake up again on October 1st in 2019.
No, I wake up end of July for Midsummer Scream, and then it's crazy. What's the date today? The 15th?
Yes, we just got out of a screening of the new Halloween. There, we got our plugs in.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
We got our plugs in. I don't know when we're going to post this, but we're recording this on October 15th.
Well, but okay, the whole point was, like the haunt season. I've been to, I think, 16 haunts so far, and that's like individual venues, and it's just to come and be able to take a break and review a film again.
Right. We'll be able to read your review of Halloween on filmthreat.com, your glorious, detailed review. But I thought, because I ran into you at the screening and did not expect to, I thought this would be a fun time for us to have a whole conversation about Halloween.
Let's do it.
And I should say, we're going to do a spoiler episode. So, prepare to hear spoilers. This is the episode about Halloween that you want to listen to after you have seen the new Halloween, because I think you're going to want to discuss it amongst yourselves. So there's a lot to talk about. But let's talk about the original Halloween. I saw the film as a kid. As a little kid, saw the original. It's a classic. The music is is just incredible. I mean, you just play. It's along with the Jaws theme song is one of those ones that you just, of course, never forget, right? And Jamie Lee Curtis is incredible. There's nudity in that film. That was at a time when nudity was almost like a little checkbox that had to be in every horror film. You don't necessarily see nudity in horror films today. It's not a guarantee, but it was back then. And that movie it really established the slasher film genre and all the tropes that we, I guess, sort of enjoy today, jump scares and whatnot. They really began with that movie. I mean, everything leading up to that was kind of the original Halloween by John Carpenter in 1978 just put it all together. What are your thoughts about that film and the impression it made upon you as a youth? I don't know if I'm trying to remember if I saw it in the theater, but I know I saw it on cable many times.
The original Halloween is my favorite horror film.
Okay.
I saw it when I was 5 years old. Out the back of an open conversion van at a drive-in. We all snuck in. We all, like my cousins, aunts, uncles, we all piled in and, we hid so that they wouldn't count all the people in the drive-in. And we made our own popcorn in the big brown bag. And, that movie affected me. And it was the first time I remember seeing a movie and being scared and loving that feeling. And it stuck with me. And what's really funny is I remember seeing that as a child and connecting and identifying with, the kids in the film. And thinking, oh, Laurie, that's the nice babysitter. And the other babysitters are kind of mean, and I was digging it. And I loved it because Michael Myers wasn't mean to the kids in that film.
Oh, interesting. So what is your impression now of this Halloween? It's received, at least up to now, fairly across the board praise, having played. There have been some early screenings, and there's been a lot of praise. I think you and I, what's weird is there's certain friends, when I see movies with them, I just look at their face and I know the review. And I feel like you and I made the same face to each other. I don't think it lives up to the hype that we've read so far, for sure.
I feel like I went out trick-or-treating and knocked on the door and got that door where they hand you like raisins.
It's the raisins of Halloween films?
Well, let's just say this. I mean, I know, yes, Halloween, the original, that's my favorite horror film. Okay, but this is not that. You cannot compare the two. You have to appreciate what they did with it. Let's talk
about the story a little bit, because this Halloween 2018 connects directly to Halloween 1978 in terms of, like, it's a sequel that effectively ignores every Halloween movie that happened in between in terms of story. This just fully is, there was a serial killer named Michael Myers. He's caught. The opening scene, these kind of NPR podcasters that do murder investigations.
First of all. And can I swear?
Yeah, fuck yeah, you can.
Those motherfuckers should not have even been in the goddamn movie. Okay,
it was pretty dumb. It was pretty dumb.
So this Brit. Okay, first of all, these British podcasters roll in and they're like, oh, we want to, interview Michael Myers. He's not spoken, so we want to talk to him because it's the anniversary of the 40th, the 40th anniversary of their killing, and they roll in with the mask, and the whole place goes batshit. And let me say, I really like what the Queen of Hearts did with the courtyard. Mm-hmm. She decorated it very nicely. There's a nice checkerboard. Right. I mean, I've never seen that in any other asylum, so it was a good touch. But the thing is, they have these people come in and instigate, and then their whole story, their whole arc, gets thrown away. They did not need to be in the goddamn film.
Well, at least something should have happened in that scene, now that we are getting into spoilers. So seriously, do not listen past this point for sure. We haven't really spoiled anything yet, but we're going to spoil some things. That scene was such a disappointment because it's this big build up to nothing happening. You see sort of all these other inmates that are, and they've got them. It is the weirdest. They're sitting there on these checkerboards and these kind of squares tied up, and they all start going wild, kind of like animals at a zoo going crazy. And then
picking up the bad mojo of this mask.
The bad mojo of the mask, and what's going to happen, and nothing happens. And then of course we meet Laurie. Now it's Jamie Lee Curtis's character, and she's years later now. She's kind of like Sarah Connor from Terminator 2, right? She's preparing for this day, and she's got like her house is all. And I thought the house. This is what's weird. That house was not well outfitted. As much as she was all like ready to like fight back against Michael Myers. I thought it was sort of, but it definitely had this sort of Sarah Connor vibe. What did you think meeting Jamie? And Jamie Lee Curtis, by the way, looked amazing. I loved her in this. I mean, considering what she's in her 60s now, like really it is incredible. This is a time when most actresses of a certain age think that they need to have work done, and she looks incredible without having had any work done. So that's a dumb aside. Let's put that aside for a moment. What do you think about Jamie Lee Curtis's character and her change in 40 years? And we meet not just Jamie Lee Curtis's character, her daughter played by Judy Greer, and her granddaughter played by an actress whose name escapes me. But what did you think about that whole setup, sort of jumping to that?
Okay, well, Jamie Lee Curtis is like an elemental force of horror nature. She's a Scream Queen. She's one of the original Scream Queens. So she's amazing. Her performance, I don't think that she was given enough to work with. She was one note in this program. She was, and it was not her fault. You could tell Jamie Lee Curtis has range. She was bringing everything she had to this movie. But I really don't think that we were given enough to absorb from her. To set it up, they jump, like we said, 40 years ahead, cutting off right at the end of the first movie, jumping 40 years ahead to, now. Michael's been locked up. Laurie Strode has been suffering from PTSD for 40 years, and she's holed herself up in some sort of a compound in the woods. Okay, she was just kind of this badass granola bitch that was like, okay. But when you came upon, and that's funny you mentioned Linda Hamilton, because that's when I started going in my head like, what is this missing? Okay, it's missing that Linda Hamilton badassery. Okay, you fucking loved her. You loved her. Okay, and this Laurie Strode was a victim. She was a victim that was suffering, but it never felt like she was as badass as Linda Hamilton in Terminator 2. Okay, right. They never hit those notes. So to me, it was a bit of a disappointment, to see that she was still so weak.
Well, let's talk about also the David Gordon Green directed this, and it was, I believe, Danny McBride is one of the co-writers on it, which is strange. And David Gordon Green, not traditionally a horror director, and the previous Halloween incarnations, post the first one, were for the most part done by horror directors. This one was not, and I think that is a bit where it suffers. I feel like you needed a seasoned horror director to take on the task. The other thing that I think bothered me is, sounds like a weird way of putting it, the humanization of Michael Myers. Michael Myers as a character was kind of humanized in the sense you, in a way, kind of felt bad for him. You see him, they never show his face, but you get glimpses of his face. They hired an actor to play Mike Myers. And by humanizing him, it just ends up not being scary. It not being as scary as it really should have been for a Halloween movie. I will say, on the positive side, the music is great. And the music was done by Carpenter. Music was fun.
Hits all of the literal notes that it should.
Right.
Everything that Carpenter touched on this was good. Okay, but I can say one thing about the script. Had they paid attention to the plot as much as they did all of the Easter eggs and meta references,
right,
we would have had a scarier film.
That's sort of the big problem with this is there were so many references to the original Halloween that, and there is one callback that is so good where effectively Laurie flips the script on Michael Myers, but it weakened him. It made him less scary. There's also a turn in Judy Greer's character that I didn't really see coming. I guess I should have, and that kind of I felt like it just diminished. It made Mike Myers less scary as a character. Like he could be. You saw that he was human. You saw there's a scene where, there are several scenes where, there's sort of a supernatural element to the first one that he can't be killed. But in this, you kind of see like, oh, I guess he could be killed. He can be injured. He can have appendages lopped off, and that made it just far less threatening. He's a guy with a knife who is not a good conversationalist.
Yeah, not a word, not a single word. But yeah, I'm still forming my thoughts about it, but there were no moments of genuine suspense. There were no moments of genuine fear. This was a movie. This was a revenge movie. This was not a horror movie. This was, I again, like I said, I really liked the references, but I was not scared at all.
Yeah, see, I think that is the biggest problem. This is I guess it's just it's a little pandering in some sense. And I think when we walked out, we were talking with a group of people, and the first thought that struck me is it almost seems like this Halloween is a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox. It's a copy of a copy of a copy, and then after a while, and see, I'm not even sure people even understand. Xerox was a thing where you would copy things. This is before we had. This is just, anyways. It's just like a copy of a copy of a copy. So after a while, it just felt like, oh, the references are just to make a certain section of the audience happy, but it felt. I never felt like I actually if I'll know that I've seen a good horror film if I want to sleep with the light on, right, which hasn't happened since I saw The Thing when I was a kid.
The only other film this year that really kind of got me was Hereditary. Damn good movie because it stuck with me, and the original Halloween stuck with me. Now, okay, quick aside, I'm trying to be very cautious of not comparing.
Right.
Because you can't. You're not going to top it. You're not going to top the original. You're just not going to do it.
Well, it's almost like a redo boot. A redo boot?
Redo boot.
Yeah. It's a redo and a reboot and
But that's why some people like Star Wars. Some people like Empire Strikes Back. Some people like Return of the Jedi. Those all three work because they're very different films of the same canon, okay, and they have very different personalities. Those worked, or the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Mm-hmm. Those are standalone good films. Mm-hmm. That's what they were trying to go for, but it just, man, it didn't work, and I can say I'm disappointed.
Yeah,
I can definitely say I'm disappointed.
So these are your early impressions. We're literally standing outside.
Yeah.
We're standing outside the ArcLight cinemas in Hollywood having this discussion, but it's still fresh in your mind. I know that you'll go into more detail having had time to process it, and I look forward to reading your review on Film Threat. But what are your any sort of final thoughts on this? Like, because I wish I could accompany this podcast with a picture of Norm's face as he's just like, you can see this. It's I would describe it as seething disappointment.
You know, I wouldn't say seething.
Okay.
I would say, what is it? Depressed. sad and disappointed at what could have been a damn good horror flick, you know, that got turned into a revenge story. So
yeah, I mean, it does. I will say this: I was highly entertained for the last 15 minutes of the film. The last 15 minutes is kind of a bait and switch.
Now though, okay, the original.
Right.
Pretty much nothing happens until the last 20 minutes of that film.
That's true. It's all this setup, like, let's get to know everybody. And in this, we get to know everybody.
Well, but that was also a very efficient and merciless little motherfucker of a movie where there were things that would happen and keep reminding you need to be afraid of this threat. Yeah. And then when it came in, you know, and it just everything went nuts. But this film, meh.
Meh. How many mehs do you give it? I mean, look, I know you're gonna have to think about it, so I'm curious to see your rating.
I'm just still mulling it over because I'm just trying hard not to compare it to my favorite goddamn horror film. So I'm trying to be fair about it, you know.
Yeah, but this is the follow up. I mean, they're
directly connecting it.
They're directly connecting it, and even there are references in it that basically deny that the previous or sort of all the Halloween films in the middle never happened.
Which you know, you can debate about that move all you want, but the question is whether or not it serviced a better story. Okay, and I am still out on that. I think it's meh. You know, I don't see the benefit of it. I really don't. But I'm gonna have to think.
All right.
You know, I literally just walked out of the damn movie, but I can tell you that my initial reaction to this, as opposed to, say, Annihilation, vastly different. Where
right.
I knew everything that I loved about Annihilation, and this one, oh man.
Well, Norm, we got to have you on the podcast more because you're on the episode where we talked about Annihilation, the episode where we talked about Truth or Dare. And
oh my God!
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's another Blumhouse movie. Blumhouse, the house that jump scares built. But what?
I'm gonna be polite.
Okay, be polite. All right, Norm from Horror Buzz and contributor to FilmThreat.com. Honored to have you as part of our team, and
honored to be had.
Yeah, and also just it's honored to spend this, you know, Halloween screening with you.
Yeah, indeed. And then it's I've missed you. I haven't seen you since I've been.
You disappear during haunt season. You disappear.
I do, and I hide in the fog, and
That's okay.
You know, that's what I do. But I come back. I swear to God, I come back.
All right. Well, thanks, Norm, and visit FilmThreat.com. Follow us on all the social. It's just Film Threat, and I'm Chris Gore at that Chris Gore.
And also follow horrorbuzz.com on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and check out our 7-second reviews of all the haunted houses we've been to. Hashtag 7-second reviews.
Okay, I have to check those out because I love haunted houses and hay rides. And this is we were talking before the screening. This is my favorite month of the year. Like, this is because there's, you know, Halloween doesn't come with the kind of stress that a lot of other holidays come with. You know, the stress of like, Thanksgiving.
For yourself.
Oh, exactly. Okay. All right. I guess for me, some holidays can be stressed, but Halloween is stress free. It's fun and drinking and haunted houses and parties.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is.
Except when it comes to movies, then it's another discussion.
Well, no, yeah. The Halloween, regardless of the amount of work I'm having to do at this time of year, is still the very best.
Well,
very best time of the year.
Enjoy it. All right. Thanks for listening. Let's get out of here.
Later.
I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left. No reason, no conscience, no understanding, and even the most rudimentary sense of life or death, of good or evil, right or wrong. I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face, and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.